Today, we are digging into a really provocative book called The Global Coup by Dr. Jacob Nordangard. He's a Swedish scholar with a PhD in technology and social change, and his book puts forward a pretty controversial idea that major world events aren't happening by chance, but are actually part of a deliberate, long-term plan. So let's break down the book's core claims straight from the source. Right from the start, the book hits you with its central thesis. It says that recent events aren't just a series of unfortunate crises. Instead, it claims they look more like moves in a well-directed chess game, which it calls a global coup d'etat, with the end goal being complete control of the whole planet. That's a huge claim, so let's see how the book tries to back it up. So what does a global coup d'etat actually mean in this context? Well, according to the book, it all centers around a term you've probably heard bouncing around, the Great Reset. The book defines the Great Reset as this grand plan to basically merge humanity with a global technological system. And the tools for this are all the new technologies of what's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The whole thing, the book argues, is being sold to us as the only solution for keeping everyone safe and well. Okay, so if there's a plan, you've got to ask, who's behind it? To understand the argument, we need to look at who the book identifies as the key players, the architects, if you will, of this very long game. The book's historical trail starts more than 100 years ago. It points to what it claims are minutes from one of the first meetings of the Carnegie Endowment back in 1908. In those meetings, the trustees apparently asked this jaw-dropping question: is there any means known more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire people? The book presents this as some of the earliest evidence of intent. From that starting point, the book traces what it calls a direct line of influence through some of the world's most powerful organizations. It starts with the Carnegie Endowment in 1910, moves through the creation of the UN after World War II, then the World Economic Forum in 71, and it all leads up to a partnership they signed in 2019. The argument is that this isn't a random collection of groups, but a continuous chain pushing a single vision for global governance. And that 2019 partnership between the UN and the World Economic Forum is presented as a huge deal. According to the book, this agreement, which was designed to speed up the UN's 2030 agenda, was the moment that power over our future was effectively handed over to a group of unelected global corporations. All right, so let's get into the mechanics of it. How does the book claim this agenda actually gets pushed forward? Well, the key, it argues, is something it calls the strategy of crisis. The core idea here is that these huge existential crises, the kind that scare everyone, they're not just tragedies that happen to us. The book alleges they are used as catalysts, as opportunities to bring in radical, pre-planned changes that people would never, ever accept under normal circumstances. For a prime example, the book points to 9/11. And it highlights this quote from a report written a year before the attacks by a think tank called the Project for the New American Century. They wrote that the transformation they wanted would take a very long time, unless there was a catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. The book is quick to point out that many members of that group went on to serve in the Bush administration. And this is where the author highlights a pattern. The book argues that it doesn't matter what the crisis is, terrorism, climate change, or a global pandemic, the solution that's always put on the table is the exact same: more centralized, global governance. So, how would you actually build this new system of global governance? Well, the book claims the toolkit is already here, and it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The World Economic Forum itself talks openly about these massive technological shifts. The book argues that these things, from implantable tech and AI making decisions for us to designer beings and neurotechnologies, aren't just cool gadgets. They are the actual building blocks of a new global society built on control. This leads to one of the most mind-bending concepts in the book, the Internet of Bodies, or IOB. It's described as a network where our own bodies become data points. Information is collected through devices we implant, swallow, or wear. And the goal? To monitor, to analyze, and maybe even to modify our behavior. It really blurs the line between being human and being technology. And that brings us to what the book presents as the grand finale of its argument, the COVID-19 pandemic. It's framed as the ultimate catalyzing event they were waiting for. The book lays out this timeline, and the speed of it is pretty remarkable. In October 2019, you have Event 201, a pandemic simulation of a global coronavirus outbreak. Just 2 months later, the first real cases are reported. By March 2020, it's a global pandemic. And just 4 months after that, the WEF publishes its book, COVID-19, the Great Reset. The text argues that timing is just too perfect to be a coincidence. And they didn't exactly hide it. The book COVID-19, The Great Reset says, right there in black and white, that the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. So according to Nordangard's analysis, the crisis was immediately seized upon as that long-awaited chance to push through these massive global changes. So what's the bottom line? What does this all add up to? Well, the book's central argument is that we are in the middle of a planned coup to replace our current world system. The goal is to shift from national sovereignty to global governance, from individual liberties to collective control, from free markets to something called stakeholder capitalism, all of it powered by a complete digital transformation of society. The global coup d'etat makes the incredible claim that this whole plan is unfolding right out in the open through official reports, documents, and public partnerships. And so it leaves us, the reader, with one final, really provocative question. How do we tell the difference between mere coincidence and actual intent? That's a challenging thought to leave you with.